From 19 points down in the second quarter to 1-1 in the series, the Timberwolves just walked into Denver and flipped this first round matchup on its head. Everything was on the line for the Wolves in this one. We know teams don't come back from 0-2 deficits, not as the 6th seed, not on the road, and not against one of the best players in the world. But now the series is tilted into Minnesota's favour, and it was genuinely insane that this game got them there. And really, I think the only way to break this game down would be to split it into 4 quarters, because each period told a different story and all of them were worth exploring. For Minnesota, the first quarter went about as badly as it could have gone on both ends of the floor. I think especially offensively, they looked slow, unsure, and unable to break open Denver's defense. Right away we had Ant again letting this gap help bother him and trying to bail the team out with bad shots instead of just finding the open man. We saw a lot of that in game 1 as Edwards was trying to work himself back into shape, and it felt like more of the same in this game. Even when that gap help came and he got off the ball, there was no attempt to put the ball on the deck and force Denver to protect the rim off the drive. They just chose the worst option time and time again, and that fueled Denver's transition offense and lit a fire under them that was tough for Minnesota to put out. And this was a team-wide issue. They just couldn't get into the heart of Denver's defense, where we know they are vulnerable. I think Minnesota seemed to know that either getting to the rim or getting Denver into scrambling defensive rotations was the game plan, but they just executed everything as bad as they possibly could, and it looked like we were just going to get a worse version of an already pretty bad Game 1 offense, and if that happened, this series was over. So it was pretty alarming that Minnesota came out like this. And there's dozens of examples like this one, where they're slow in their decision making, or they're not ready to receive the pass and punch those gaps to the rim, and end up with a shot that they can make, but isn't the right shot against this defense in this playoff series. It's a really fine margins game in the postseason, and even something as small as this pass being too low is enough to give the defense half a second extra to recover and make life difficult. And Minnesota were landing on the wrong side of those fine margins for the entirety of the first 15 minutes or so of this game. And the same could be said about their defense. Again, I don't think they were lacking intent, but I think they were lacking execution, and against an offense like Denver's, a lack of execution is a killer. You get confused on this simple off-ball switch, and it's the easiest of points that you can't afford to give up. Or if you sag off Jamal Murray too much to help on Jokic, it's a 4-point play. There were multiple 4-point plays in this game, multiple open lanes, multiple breakdowns, and again this kinda seemed like everything was going right for Denver and everything was going wrong for the Wolves, and that the series was very quickly being ripped out of Minnesota's hands. But when Rudy Gobert, who was great in game 1 and great in this game, picked up his 3rd foul early in the second quarter, that's when Minnesota discovered their offensive spark, and that was the overwhelming theme of that second period. Without Gobert, they could spread Denver's defense out and really get back to the game plan of crushing their weak interior defense. And it was Edwards and Randle as the opening action that bent this game back toward Minnesota. Because unlike with Gobert, Jokic had to chase Randle after he set the screen, he had to be aware of what he was doing, and frankly, Jokic can't get back to cover multiple actions or guys coming downhill at him. And that set off a chain reaction in Minnesota's offense. Ant Randle ball screen, they want to keep 2 in Ant's way at all times, but Randle can pop unlike Gobert, and Jokic can't recover. So the rotation defense needs to kick in, and Minnesota picked it apart till there was no more flesh on that defensive carcass. And this was the game plan. Single out Jokic's defense in whatever way they could. If he's dropped way deep trying to stop Randle's drive game, then flip it back to Ant and go at Jokic in a drop coverage that he can't survive defensively in. Jokic is smart. He's always in damage limitation on defense, which means he's dropping off Randle as soon as he touches it. So a handoff leaves him in the danger zone for Ant and allows Ant to get downhill and get the buckets this series demands him to get. We can all plainly see Jokic's greatness every night, but Minnesota win this game because they exposed his huge weakness for an entire quarter, and that resuscitated Minnesota back to life. Even if it's not pick and roll, when Minnesota gets Denver into rotation, Jokic is not going to make his rotation to the shooter or overextend himself in any way defensively, and Minnesota took full advantage of that fact. So the Wolves are now back in this thing, but it's a tied game at halftime, and we know that Denver aren't just going to lay down on their home court, and that's exactly what we saw happen. So the third quarter to me was all about scrapping to stay with Denver. This wasn't a good quarter by either team, but Minnesota rode their luck and their scrappiness in multiple important sequences to stay afloat. Like here, they're down 1, and Ant is trying to play 2 here on the weak side, but he's late on that rotation to Johnson, and they dodge an important bullet on the miss. On the other end, Murray makes a big momentum play with the chase down block, and these two smart rotations from DiVincenzo and Gobert stop it from becoming fast break points going the other way. A 3, a block, and a fast break bucket might shift this game there. In a game like this, there's going to be turnovers. They might have to rely on a questionable non-call on this Murray 3. When the ball goes up the other end, they might miss 2 shots that you'd really expect Minnesota to make. But they need to be the ones who keep making these great contests and keep flying in for these 50-50 rebounds and winning these sloppy sequences with free throws at the other end, and using these moments when the game is really there in dispute to grab momentum. Even on a possession like this, where Edwards misses a layup he should make, and it turns directly into a fast break bucket that ignites Denver's crowd, and this is the perfect response from Donte DiVincenzo. The switch is a fraction late, and he nails that deep pull-up. He was shifting momentum back to Minnesota's favour all night, and again he jumps out on a stunt at Jokic, then recovers back to Brown, and somehow saves that ball, starts the break, and watches on as Anthony Edwards weaves through Denver's defense to give that momentum all the way back to Minnesota. I thought that's what this third quarter was all about. It was ugly, it was unpolished, and it was pure playoff basketball, but Minnesota won more of these possessions than Denver did, and I think this game probably gets away from them if they don't. Because really, they needed to be within striking distance of Denver if they wanted a platform to do what they did in the final period, which might have been the best executed high-pressure 12 minutes that we've seen from them all season. So they start by rectifying the Gobert issue on offense. He's still out there, but he's setting this flare screen for Bones' ghost screen action and giving Dosunmu that lane that they couldn't find with him out there in the first quarter. Or he's out there, but he's setting this away screen for Naz Reid so he can crack open Denver's weak defensive shell. I thought this was some of Chris Finch's best timed play calling of the season. Keeping Gobert in actions, but as an off-ball screener who can kind of escape the paint and the traffic Minnesota was trying to send there in a way that he wasn't really doing in quarter 1. I mean, even on this filthy action where he sets the away screen, DiVincenzo rejects it, and then flows back into a Spain pick and roll, with DiVincenzo as the back screener who flares out and finds Gobert wide open at the rim. Now it's a terrible finish, but it ends in the points it deserves to end in, with such a lovely play at a crucial moment of the game. Even in the final, most important offensive possession of the night, Gobert is in the dunker spot out of the way, while DiVincenzo sets the ball screen instead. Denver still choose to double off DiVincenzo, Ant makes the right pass, and DiVincenzo knocks down the biggest shot of the night. Being able to execute these offensive possessions with Gobert on the floor was so important because they needed him to do what he did on defense. Between Gobert and McDaniels, they put on a masterclass on how to stop one of the best pick and roll combos that has ever played in the NBA for a really long stretch in a really important game. Whether it was McDaniels chasing over and through and around multiple screens within one possession, just trying to stay in the vicinity of Jamal Murray, or Gobert wrestling with Jokic in straight up one-on-one post-up possessions, this was a really impressive finish to the game defensively, but there are a couple of late defensive possessions that really stood out to me. This one, where McDaniels chases through a bunch of off-ball action to fully recover back to Murray, make Denver reset, and then force them into a Jokic 3 that he doesn't want to take, which rolls straight into the next possession, where DiVincenzo gets over one big-ass Jokic screen, then flips it straight back over a second, and forces a really tough shot. And then this one where Gobert pushes Jokic out on the catch and then just shadows his every movement before forcing a miss with maybe the best defensive play of the season for Minnesota. There were just a bunch of sick defensive highlights, especially in this fourth quarter and especially from Gobert and McDaniels. But really, everyone was on a string on both ends of the floor, and that propelled Minnesota to a really fun and important win. And now it's a series, and I can't wait to see how Game 3 goes. If you liked this video and want to see more like it coming up during the playoffs, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and give me your takes on this game in the comments below. Thanks again for watching.